Welcome to Holy Magic, this episode of Writers Radio. I'm Carol Harmon. Our guest, Priscilla Long, opens her poetry book, Holy Magic, with an epigraph by Wallace Stevens. Let wise men piece the world together with wisdom, or poets with holy magic. Hey-de-ho! Here is Priscilla reading Art and Life, the opening poem in her book.
Art saves nothing, and this is not art, just words running in lines, hoping to reach redemption. Meanwhile, time is running out for bat and bob white, damselfly and butterfly. Coral reefs are dying, and salmon, once wild, breed in tubs. Don't put your hopes in poems that plot the putrid doings of bankers that bank on Franz Marc's red horses, gambling and grazing as if we'd never learned to fabricate glue from hooves. But look, the peregrines are back, startling starlings into masterpiece murmurations.
Priscilla Long is a Seattle-based poet, writer, editor, and a longtime independent teacher of writing. As well as Holy Magic, Priscilla recently released Dancing with the Muse in Old Age. To begin our conversation, I asked Priscilla what inspired her to write this book about thriving in old age.
The main thing that inspired me is that I was about to turn 80, about to enter this new country of old age, as I think of it. I needed to know the science, which a lot of science has actually changed in the last few years. And I needed to know information that wasn't stereotypes and untruths, which are so prevalent all over the place. And I needed role models. I tried to look at people who were much older than me. Some of them were about my age, like Twyla Tharp, the choreographer and dancer, who is actually older than me, but not by much. She is definitely a role model. But also people like Wayne Thiebaud, the painter who started a new body of work at age 98. A lot of these world-class creators were, in fact, disabled, and they continued to create and they continued to produce amazing works. I needed these people. I needed to see people who were conducting their lives in such a way that I could model my life after them.
Often we kind of put artists off to the side. So we think, oh, life is about this, 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 this. And then over here, there's these people who are artists. But you chose to really put artists at the core of your book.
In my view, art is for everyone. They're not like special geniuses who somehow or other, probably a gift from the muses, managed to create a body of work, but rather art, the making, whether it's a pot or whether it's cooking a wonderful dinner or whether it's designing a garden or whether it's painting or drawing or anything like that, is for everyone. It is also true that I found models who were not creators in any way, people who serve the community. Like there's a firefighter who's 85 years old and he loves firefighting, and a woman who says she doesn't have a creative bone in her body. After her husband died, she was at a loss for a while, as one is. Then she found that being of service to refugees was what she wanted to do, and she was very active, and she made friends all around the world from her work. She had I would say she is still living, has a very, very satisfying, a deeply satisfying old age. some of them started creating art late in life after they had finished some other way of life. I think the arts are very central to our lives, actually. So that's my view. Artists don't retire. I think if you have a horrible job or a tedious job or a job you've done for a long time and now you're done, well, retire. But artists, that's not the kind of job we have. No matter how financially well off or not an artist is, I mean, artists tend to keep on. They model how to do old age. I think that's another reason to look at artists.
I think that's a really good point.
The other issue is, well, some of them are famous artists, like Wayne Thiebaud was a famous artist. Yeah, sure, but he had to go to his studio every day and do something. And he started a new body of work at age 98. Purifoy is another, and Alma Thomas.
Priscilla reads about Alma Thomas. I found it helpful to go online and see the visual art being talked about.
I want to mention that many of the world-class creators that are my models, some of whom are not famous and others of whom are famous, were quite disabled. And Alma Thomas was one of those. And this is from Dancing with the Muse in Old Age. The painter and superb colorist Alma Thomas was not precisely a late starter, but before her 70s, her life was largely taken up with teaching art to children. She was born in Columbus, Georgia, attended Howard University, and got a master's degree from Columbia, studying sculpture in both places. She then taught art to children in Washington, D.C., 35 years in one room. She reflected, I enjoyed those 35 years. I devoted my life to the children, and I think they loved me. In 1964, she was offered a painting retrospective at Howard University. She was 72 and recovering from a terrific attack of arthritis. But she took up the challenge, and at that time began painting the abstractions done in vivid color that she is known for. From then on, she said, I just painted. Recognition of her work came quickly, with her banner year being 1972. That was the year she was 80 years old. She exhibited her painting at the Whitney, and New York art critics noticed it. She died at the age of 86 as an internationally recognized artist.
What would you like to say to younger people? You know, like people that are really a lot younger than us.
Yeah, the 20-year-olds. Here's what I have to say.
Okay, great.
You 20-year-olds. Well, Beck Levy's work at the Yale School of Public Health is that a 20-year-old who has negative attitudes toward, and many do and some don't, so, listen up, who have negative attitudes toward aging, A, toward old people, and then B, toward their own aging, or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds, have 7 years less to live, much greater chance of cardiac, much greater issues, much greater chance of dementia. And that's interesting, isn't it? I can understand the reason for it, because if you think aging is bad, and there's so much ageism around, I mean, hopefully there's a movement against this, but it's so toxic. There are many, many, many advantages to being old. This is the big secret. It's not such a secret to old people. Old people are happier. I mean, in general, that happiness, the U curve of happiness is very widespread, that younger people are happy and old people are happy in general. Not everyone, not every young person, not every old person, but in general. And it's middle-aged people that have that there's a lot of stress. But old people are, in terms of creative work, you have more confidence, you have more information, you have all of this experience. It counts, it really counts, it really is helpful. And also in old age, you're much more emotionally stable in general. And that helps you with creative work. That helps you tremendously. What's important, I think, is to kind of look at one's attitudes toward old age, because they're affecting you. They are very personally powerful. This is part of the science that's coming out. If you believe that being old is bad, you're kind of dreading it. You're not preparing. You're not taking care of yourself the same way as you would, because we have more longevity now. This is increases in opportunities. It's increases in time that you have to do what you want to do, what you dream of doing. It allows for a longer lifespan of happiness, productivity, being engaged with your community. What I'm saying is, it's great to be old. So listen up. And especially if you're a young poet or a young artist, there's a study by a sociologist, a Harvard sociologist, Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot, and she doesn't give the names of these people that she's studying. I mean, she changes their names, so you don't know who they are. But these are people who, they had a pretty successful careers. They made money, but they weren't really satisfied. So very late in life, they quit that. One guy, he always wanted to sing opera, and he was apparently a fairly well-known figure in public health. He wanted opera lessons as a young man, and his mother said opera is for sissies. A lot of her subjects of her study really were discouraged as young people. They were discouraged from going into the arts, and so he started studying opera at age 70. One has these opportunities when you get older, and also you're kind of straightened out as to what you want to do, which you might not be straightened out when you're 20, or you might be. There's many, many advantages, and the last chapter in the book is in Dancing with the Muse in Old Age, is the advantages of being an old creator.
We end this section of our discussion with 2 readings from Dancing with the Muse in Old Age.
My friend, the poet, novelist, and essayist Jack Remick, published during his 70s 10 books, including 9 novels, a book of poems, and a book of essays. He just turned 80, and he is still going strong. And I myself, rather than slowing down in my 70s, have sped up. Much of my work appears in individual pieces outside of books, but of my 7 books today, 5, 2 books of poems, a collection of memoirist essays that incorporate science, a handbook on how to carry out creative work, and this book were published after I turned 72. At my present age, I possess 2 things I had considerably less of in earlier days: time and confidence. To elegize is one of the jobs of art. Elegy remembers and honors the deceased. It means the beloved will not disappear into nothingness, will not be utterly forgotten. Their existence and who they were will remain in the world somehow, in some form. Is it too obvious to say that one advantage of growing old is to remain alive to the beauty and suffering of the world? To make an elegy is to express that beauty and that suffering. That I have been able to elegize my younger sister Suzanne gives me great satisfaction. Does that sound odd? She was a stunning beauty with a funny sense of humor, and she was very creative. Her drawings in watercolors still hang on my walls. In her early 30s, she developed paranoid schizophrenia. At the age of 40, she disappeared from a mental health facility. We conducted a nationwide search. A few months later, she was found dead, a likely suicide. During the 30 years since we lost Suzanne, I have written poems about her and to her. I have written the story of what happened to her. I have written a piece that includes her story as well as the current science on schizophrenia. I have dedicated a book of poems to her memory. All this makes her memory more than a newspaper story, more than a case number at the sheriff's office, more than one more sad story forgotten among all the other sad stories. Art helps to make us part of a world larger than just ourselves and our own circles and family members. What transpires and who we are is not merely private or shameful or secret or just plain lost, as if it had never happened.
We don't usually combine two books in one program, but in this case, I really wanted to include some of your poetry because I think it's really important that you are yourself an active creator of artistic writing as well as practical writing and inspirational writing like this book. Perhaps you could talk about your poetry a bit.
Poetry is kind of at the center of my life. I started writing what I called poems, when I was 16 in my journal. And they're poems because they always are called poem. Of late, I have 2 published books and I have a third circulating. I believe it is important to be productive. I have a writing buddy and we look at a model poem every week and we read it, and then we each write a poem, have something to do with the model. Could have one word from the model, or it could be a form that the model uses. And the model is always from the world of published poetry, the huge world of published poetry. On the one hand, we're expanding our aesthetics, we're expanding our understanding of what a poem can be. On the other hand, we're each writing 52 poems a year. Poetry is just an art form that keeps giving you back all the time. I mean, I think it's probably like other art forms too, painting. It's really important to me to keep developing, changing, and growing in general, but also in terms of this art form. Holy Magic is organized according to colors. And so there's a red section, a blue section, an orange section, a yellow section, and a black and white section. In that book, more than in the previous book, I see them, especially some of the poems, as a painting. Ars Poetica. The common yellow of urine, not used like moons in poems, not overdone, odoriferous, despite its daily stream. Despite Duchamp, urine's uncommon in art, yet why not put urine in? Let it pour from the body's urn, its color of cardamom, saffron, lemon, its ochre steam, its humble animal origin. We look up to logic, spirit, thought, but urine's sterile and pure. Its potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus could fertilize our fields, ground our airy poems. Allison in Leaves. This has an epigraph from Thomas Transtromer. Dozens of dialects of green. Allison in Leaves. In green memory, barefoot, my niece perches parrot-like, perfect, at home out on a limb of a sycamore tree. Her pants are green, her t-shirt white and green. The light is green. She holds out for all to see a green pear. As leaves sparkle yellow splats and dots, so Allison's yellow hair is lit up green. This photo, awash in summer, proves that happiness is green. Part of how poetry works, not through this is what this means, although I write poetry that I think you can tell, what it means, but it works by an immediate transition into your brain, and especially like an image or a color, which is an image. That was tremendous fun to work on that book. Night and Sun. This one has an epigraph from Anne Carson. Love is, as you know, a harrowing event. Night contains myriad suns, galactic light, moon dust, beams, shooting stars, tides of darkness dreaming eons gone. Night contains the moonscape lit by earth, moon's seething bay, its bay of dew, its sea of rain and lake of dreams, though sun is blind to night's black glittering, night sighs all night toward sun.
It's great when we love our own work, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If you push away, oh, is this going to be any good? Oh, am I any good? If you just push that away, the external world away, and just the process of making in the arts is just so very, very satisfying. So you have a relationship between yourself and the piece that you're working on. That's where the relationship is. And then later the world gets it. We go around reading, and in reading you learn a lot, and there you have the relationship between the audience and yourself. And sometimes you'll revise a poem, after reading it or practically during reading. It's like, whoop, that did not work right there. There's that learning too, but that's a later stage. In the beginning, it's just between you and the whatever you're making. If you're making a pot, if you're making a painting, if you're making a poem, there's a relationship there, which I think needs to be sheltered for a certain amount of time until you get it to a certain point. It's a very pleasurable type of human activity, which is very ancient and very, very common. I know there's a lot of talk about the arts. Oh, you're doing art, so you must not need to make money or eat or anything. But no, I mean, it's very, very common and it's available for anyone. Nocturne, and this one has an epigraph by Nazim Hikmet. I just remembered the stars. I love them too. Nocturne. I sit forgotten among the foxgloves. I chuckle pebbles with my sandal foot. Some rodent, rat, or squirrel rustles, restless as yearning. The moon, solitary queen, dabbles in gabled windows, in gutters, gibbous, gorgeous. She, wanting nothing, takes all. I let it all go. I become moon and stone and fern.
You have been listening to Seattle author Priscilla Long read from two of her recent books and in discussion with me, Carol Harmon. Holy Magic, Poetry, was published in 2020 by Moonpath Press, for which it won the Sally Albizo Poetry Book Award. Dancing with the Muse in Old Age is a 2022 release of Coffeetown Press. Both books may be ordered through your favorite library, bookstore, or online retailer. My thanks to Priscilla for our lively conversation. Also thanks to Ingrid Rose and Gary Sill, my fellow producers. Ingrid and I generate the programs, while Gary is our music and technical wizard who produces original compositions for each program. Thanks for listening. Each of our programs is available as a podcast at writersradio.ca or wherever you get your podcasts. If you liked what you heard, please spread the word and sign up for our free program announcement newsletter.
You have been listening to Writers Radio, a non-commercial collaborative project which presents talented writers reading their own work. These stories, essays, and conversations revisit the long tradition of oral storytelling that connects us to the inspiration behind the words. Be sure to check the website, writersradio.ca, to subscribe to our free notifications list. It's also a way of letting the writers know you are there and appreciating their creative work.
Writers Radio broadcasts from Half Moon Bay on the Sunshine Coast in Canada, traditional tribal land of the Sechelt Nation of the Coast Salish peoples. We express our gratitude for their wisdom teachings and land stewardship.